And this sound means that it's time for a segment we like to call Conservative Future. It really is a time where we try to just interview young conservatives. Conservatives who are, kind of up and coming, are the leaders of the future and that sort of thing. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first got involved in this in like 2009, there just aren't very many young conservatives, because a lot of times when you're younger, you are liberal. I mean, when I was in college, I was liberal. That's just the way I was. Not a classical liberal, but, the kinds of liberal. I'm basically trying to pay a penance, I guess, for all my ridiculous thoughts in the past. But anyway, welcome back. Welcome to the program for the first time. We have Mr. Kyle Boyd with us. He's our guest today for our Young Conservative or Conservative Future segment. Kyle, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be with you this morning.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you. So talk to us, Kyle. Let's just start from the top. You're 29 years old, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so you're 29. How did you develop a conservative worldview, and how did you arrive at this point?
Well, honestly, I've been conservative probably my whole life. I think, like you said just a moment ago, when I was in college, there were probably some times where I had a little more liberal leaning ideologies at times. But I grew up in a conservative home, and grew up in you grow up in the South. Most of us tend to grow up, I think, in the South. Or traditionally have grown up in the South in more of a conservative environment. Grew up with a family that's, very Christian faith oriented. And so for me, it wasn't really a battle to become a conservative. It's always just kind of been what my family has believed and stood for, whether that be conservative socially and morally, or even politically and fiscally conservative. So it's just kind of always been ingrained in my DNA from the very beginning.
Well, that's good. And we hear that from a lot of folks, how it was their upbringing that led them to this point. And I always, when I hear that, sometimes I forget to say this, but I think if we have any young parents out there listening, that is something to certainly take to heart, and to not just hear, but to implement and realize how valuable a strong family and parenting and being intentional with your kids is, not necessarily so that they come up and agree with all of your views politically, but just, what kind of influence you do have as parents over your kids. And it's very, very important. Now, Kyle, what is it that you do right now for a living? I talked to you earlier. You're actually involved in you have two things that you do, right?
Yeah, I'm bivocational. In my secular career, I work as a CFO of ABC Block and Brick in Little Rock. We manufacture concrete masonry units. And then in the other part of my world, I am on the pastoral staff at Turnpoint Church in Conway.
Wow. That's awesome. And so, how did you fall into the pastoral staff there? Was that what you were doing initially, or were you in the secular world initially?
Well, I've grown up in ministry. My family's been in the ministry, and I always knew I had a call of God on my life to pursue and to follow. Doesn't mean I always followed it as well as I should. There are times, when you're younger, when you're in college, you don't want to follow God always. Mm-hmm. But I got my secular degree and went to work. I started my career at a public accounting firm in Northwest Arkansas, and then became a youth pastor there at a church in Rogers, and then moved back down. I went to school at UCA, and so we moved back down. My wife and I did moved back down here a couple of years ago. Started working in the church here. Worked in some various positions, and now we oversee the youth and the college and young adult groups, as well as some other administrative things at the church. But it's been, like I said, I grew up in a ministry family, and just like my conservative values were always there from the very beginning, ministry roots and trying to follow after the will of God has always been always been there in our minds of trying to follow what he wants us to do. So it's just, I don't know that I can say it was a moment in time where it was like, you got to do this, but God has just continued to open doors for us. We've tried to follow the best we could.
We're talking with Kyle Boyd. This is our Young Conservative segment where we kind of highlight future conservatives. So, Kyle, tell me about conservatism politically. When you hear that word in a political context, what does it mean to you? Because sometimes it can mean different things to different people.
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the best ways that I think of it is it's simplicity. I think the government should be limited to its most simple functions, to its most necessary functions, and then we should as Americans have the right to live our life and do the things that we want to do without the government interfering. So I think conservative is about making everything simple, about getting all the complexities of government and all that kind of stuff out of the way, and just living by common sense deals. Now we need government. Obviously, there are some things that we need government for. We need them to help provide the common defense and to do certain things. But honestly, when it comes to business, I work in a small business. Our company we have 9 manufacturing facilities. 8 of those are in Arkansas. 1 of those is in Louisiana. We're the largest concrete masonry unit manufacturer in the state of Arkansas. I want government to get out of the way so our business can grow, and so the simple things that government can do without getting in the way and convoluting the system, that's what I want. When I think of being conservative and having a conservative political view, it is trying to let the individual govern themselves to as much extent as possible and getting the government out of the way.
Yeah, I can't agree. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you are exactly right, and I'm really glad that you brought up the small business aspect of it. As being a CFO, I think you obviously see the money coming in, the money going out, the money going to the government, and so when the government comes back, I mean, specifically here in Arkansas, we have seen Republican-led legislature raise our taxes and attempt to raise them even more, and you stop and think, well, we're already giving you money to do these things. And if you would just fulfill the stuff that we all agree on, like building roads, instead, we come up with new programs and new ways of dependency, and it just gets frustrating. And I think they're mismanaging our money. Let me ask you this, Kyle. How do you feel about what it's the overwhelming philosophy today among our leaders here in Arkansas and other states as well? And it's what they call economic development. And in many cases, their definition of economic development is taking your taxpayer money that you're sending to Arkansas, and then they give it away to company A or B that's outside, and in most recent cases, a couple companies from China, and they get to come here with our tax dollars. And I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be better if we just eliminated the Arkansas corporate tax? And quit doing that and then just treat all of our existing businesses and let them flourish and reinvest. And we've already seen that with the tax cut, the giant corporate tax cut we got nationally. How many people got bonuses? How many, Apple investing all these billions of dollars? What do you think about that?
Well, I think economic development is a lot of times a fancy term to say we're going to take money out of successful people's hands and we're going to put it in the hands of people who are running businesses who couldn't make it without government coming in and subsidizing it, and usually that's because somewhere else down the road there's a payday for someone else who's helping them get that money. Our business, hey, look, the Arkansas Economic Development Committee is not coming out to ABC Block and Brick and saying, hey, how can we give you guys taxpayers money to increase your business? We're going out there every day and we're hustling.
Yeah.
We're finding sales and we're looking at ways that we can cut costs and increase our bottom line so that we can pay our employees. We have all together between our owner, we're a privately owned company, all between ABC Block and Brick and a couple of other companies that we have about 300 employees all together, and we take great pride in being able to provide them with good livings and all that kind of stuff, and good benefits but yeah, we're paying money, and we don't mind. We don't mind paying our share on a corporate basis to hey, look, we've got a fleet of about 40 big rigs and tractor trailers, and so we use the roads, we use these kinds of things. So we rely on them have no problem with paying our share to help that kind of stuff. But when you're taking our money, and like you said, there's companies that are coming into Arkansas from China and from these other countries, and we're using taxpayer dollars to fund them and to help them succeed. But we're not taking care of our small business owners. We're not taking care of that. So I do think that there is a lot of mismanagement, like you said, of funds. And I'm not at the point where I want to say we need to get rid of a corporate tax rate or anything like that completely, because I do think, we've prospered by the people of Arkansas, and so we need to, pay our share to benefit those things. But the money that comes in, whether it's local or federal tax dollars that are coming in, there's gross mismanagement of funds. I'll just tell you this. I look at things like, for instance, the United States Postal Service, which constantly runs with a negative, in the red. And if ABC Block, if I ran the company like that, I'd either get fired or our whole company would go bankrupt. You know what I mean? So only the government is allowed to run, fiscally irresponsible. Those of us out here in the small business world, we know what it's like. We know what it's like to make the hard calls and say, hey, the money's not here, or go through the recession. We're in the construction products industry, so during the recession, it hit us hard. And I know what it's like to have employees come to you and say, hey, I need a raise. I need to make more money so I can support my family, and to have to look at them and say, hey, right now is the time we're all making cuts. We can't do it. But now that the economy's back rolling again, now that the tax reform legislation has been passed out, our company is able to look at things and say, hey, we can give some of our we can do some employee bonuses and raises and things like that. We're better. The small business owner who's a successful small business. Now, there's people get into entrepreneurial endeavors who make big mistakes and don't know how to manage their own capital. But the successful small businesses like ABC Block and Brick, our owner, they can do a whole lot better with the money that they're earning and putting it back into people's pockets and investing in the economy than the government can ever do. And so let's make sure that small business owners, entrepreneurs, people that go out and have built this country on their backs. Our owner, for instance, he started as a 12-year-old boy laying block and brick with his dad in Whitehall, and now he's got the largest manufacturing, the largest concrete masonry manufacturing company in the state of Arkansas, and that's because he knew how to take his money and invest it and work hard and put it where it needed to go. The government didn't do that for him, and so I said all that to say this is there's a lot of mismanagement of funds. If we put the money back in the hands of the small business owners, they'll do a lot better with growing our economic development for the state and for the country than the government will ever do.
Yeah, it's very, very, very well said. And I certainly appreciate your perspective, your point of view, Mr. Kyle Boyd, and I appreciate you coming on. And I just have one more point to make. And so I totally understand, and I think most people appreciate, we all want to pay our taxes and contribute and do everything. But back to the Arkansas corporate tax rate. If you did eliminate it, just so you know, I want our audience to know this. If you were to eliminate the corporate tax break and you were to eliminate the giving away of taxpayer money to these companies trying to recruit them here, it actually would just offset. If we would just stop doing what we're doing, you could give all these corporations in Arkansas a massive tax break.
Absolutely,
and it would actually offset. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And they're going to debate it. I hope they debate it down there and eventually move on it. But it's doable. The amount of money Arkansas gets off of the corporate tax rate is really not that much money. So anyway. Sure.
And you're exactly right. There's always a trade-off, and if we would reduce our wasteful spending, we could. And manage our finances well as a state, we could reduce a lot of things for the taxpayer. Like I said, I believe in the idea of taxes. I don't think that we can have a tax-free state,
correct,
or anything. But you're exactly right on the idea of we could rearrange our spending. We could get rid of a lot of wasteful, mismanaged funds, and we could significantly reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I appreciate your perspective. I'd love to do it again sometime, so let's stay in touch.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity very much.
Yes, sir. All right, be safe. Folks, that concludes this edition of our Conservative Future segment.